Hello and welcome to Fueling Around with me, Jason Plato, and the Bert to my Ernie, it's Dave Vitti.
Hello.
Fueling Around is powered by Adrian Flux. As the UK's largest specialist insurance broker, Adrian Flux will tailor a quote to your exact needs and help save you money on your car, your bike, or even your home insurance. How are you, mate?
I'm very good. Now listen, we have to start this off. Are you wearing shorts?
I am. And I don't know why. I've had them on for 2 days. No, 3 days. And the funny thing is, it's not so warm outside, is it?
It's really not. At the time of recording, I mean, you could be listening to this episode of the podcast at any point. You might be lying on a beach somewhere. But at the time of recording, it is mid-February, and it is currently minus 2 degrees in the UK where we are. And we have this Zoom link so that myself and Jason and our guests can all see each other. And you're wearing shorts. I've got 2 hoodies on and a scarf.
Yeah, but I've got the central heating on care home setting.
Do you know what? Somebody's doing very well at the moment. If you can have the heating on that much all day long.
But I've turned the gas meter around the wrong way, so it's winding back.
I think we should get on with the show before we incriminate ourselves and we have the police knocking at the door.
Absolutely. So today, mate, our guest is a gentleman who I reckon must have the absolute don of a showbiz agent, because he's just everywhere. I mean, he's on the telly, he's on the radio. It is, of course, the TV and radio presenter extraordinaire, Mr. Melvin Odoom.
Hello, gents.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Do you know what? He's right as well. Everything you're on at the moment, every time I stick the box on, you're on there on something different with you and Ricky.
You know what? We've been lucky, Dave. And to be fair, it's just been loads of game shows that I seem to be losing. It's like we did The Wheel a little while ago, lost that. We did Supermarket Sweep, lost that. I think Catch Point was literally the only show that we've won in the last 3 or 4 months, which was a massive achievement for me.
You know this show, Jason, don't you?
I do, yeah. But just going back, how on earth can you lose at Supermarket Sweep?
We were up against the chaser, JP. It wasn't very balanced. We were up against one of the chasers, and she just knew literally all the answers, and me and Ricky were a little bit too slow on the uptake, and even slow within the marketplace, picking up all the bits and pieces, so we were nowhere near getting to the final.
I've always wanted to do that. Whenever I see that programme, I've always thought, I'd love to have a go at Supermarket Sweep. It must be a lot of fun.
It's so much fun, Dave. Literally, that was like the best thing about it. It's loads of fun. Ryland just makes it really, really easy for you to be there. It's in a massive studio in Kent, where they do stuff like Take Me Out and things like that. It literally looks like a Tesco's. Yeah. And yes, it's loads of fun, man.
Well, that's the thing. Whenever I see you two on there, and I mean this with the greatest respect, it's like you both won a ticket to be on all these game shows because you look so pleased and so excited this time. It's a bit like we're having the best job in the world.
At this point, we're just happy to be outside. Do you mean? Like, you guys know what it's been like the last few months. So anything that's come up, I've literally just said yes to. This is the best time to ask you to do anything because I'm just saying yes to absolutely everything.
Well, that's why we did this.
Yeah. Great thinking, guy.
We should talk cars, really. I could talk to you about telly all day, but technically this is a motoring podcast, isn't it, Jason?
So come on, love of cars. Explain.
This is an interesting one. First of all, I just got to say, it's an absolute honour for you guys to call on me because I love cars, but I don't think a lot of people know that I love cars. So when Dave messaged me on Twitter, and I was like, that's really, really nice of you to say that, because I think my mates know that I'm a bit of a petrol head, but I don't think people kind of like who listen to our radio show or see me do bits and pieces on TV knew that. So yeah, thank you for that. But yeah, my love of cars only came about when I started driving, and out of all my mates, I was probably like the last person to drive just because I was the cheapest person in our crew. And I was always that guy that wanted to be picked up and driven around. So it wasn't until I left uni and then my sister learned how to drive. I think I got my license when I was about 22, which is quite late, really late. And my first car was a Fiat Brava. It was like it was a hatchback. It was this really weird metallic green color, and the bodywork was like tin. Literally, you could tap on it and it would get a dent. But it was my first car, and I loved it. My mate Colin got it for me, and Colin was like the guy in the crew that just knew about cars. Like, you'd call him up, he'd check the engine, he'll check it inside, outside, check out the system. He was like the guy that would check your cars. And so he helped me get that first one.
And how long before the big stereo went in it?
You know what? I didn't put the stereo in
Did you
until
not?
the second car. Because I just remember everyone going to me, Melvin, if you're going to get a car, like for your first car, it's going to be hit. You're going to have your odd ding here and there. So just get a car that you're not planning to have forever.
Making mistakes.
Yeah, exactly that, Dave. So that was the Brava. So I had that for about a year. And then I moved on to, do you remember the Mazda MX-5s?
I do,
Oh,
yeah.
of course.
Yeah. The hairdresser's car, I think. I think they were affectionately christened. Weren't they hairdresser's cars, those? Is that
Yeah. Yes, and that's what my friends used to say to me on a
that
regular basis. So I got a second-hand one with the lights that used to flip up,
Yeah.
right? And it was beat down, no word of a lie. But we found this place in London that would kind of like respray the bodywork and then fix the upholstery inside and stuff like that. We put a new system in there. It was like the days of when everyone had mini disc players. So I put a mini disc player in that, and I had it for about 3 weeks until a woman drove into me at a roundabout. And because it was such an old car, she wrote it off. And so then I saved up again. At this point, probably wasn't even at KISS. I was working in a youth club in East London. And I got an MG.
What? An old MG or what?
Old
what
MG, man.
Wow,
It was
cool.
a convertible with cream leather interior. It's not amazing to look at now, but when I had that MG, it felt like I had a Ferrari back then.
Oh, mate, cool car. Really
It was a cool car.
Yeah.
And like British made. I remember I got it secondhand from this guy and got Colin again to look over it. And I had that for a few years. And I was doing a show for CBBC at the time called Basil Brush. And I was driving down to Maidstone, weirdly enough, where they do Take Me Out.
Yeah.
And on the way there, the MG blew up, the engine blew up. And it was quite a scary situation because I had to get from the fast lane all the way to the hard shoulder. And I called up the AA and they came and they towed it and took it back home for me. And I had to find a separate engine because there were no kind of garages that specifically dealt with MGs at the time. It was when they were on their way out. And we found this engine online from another, like a spare parts place. And then my mechanic put the engine in and then I literally just had to get rid of it. And I think because of that experience was quite a scary one, I was just like, from now on, I'm only going to try and get like either used and approved cars or like new cars because I can't afford to be in that situation again. And that's when I started really going in. So I got a Cooper S and then I got the BMW Coupe Z4.
Oh, yeah.
I had one of those. I had a Z4 Coupe.
That was one of my faves. I remember it was like, I used to call it the James Bond car. I got another Z4 after that, another hairdresser's car with the hardtop convertible. Then I started going to the supercars. So I had a Porsche 911 Black Edition. Then we went to the Porsche 911 S. Then I had another Porsche 911. I was obsessed with Porsches at this point. And I had this amazing grey one with panoramic roof. It was just fully kitted out. And at the time, the guy who was kind of like introducing me to Porsches, he moved over to Bentley. And he always used to say, Melvin, I'm going to get you in a Bentley. I was like, no chance. Like, that's just such an expensive, opulent car. I don't see you ever doing that. And he would always celebrate my successes with me. I love this guy. We still speak now, a guy called Bashir. And one day I went to just say hello to him at his showroom. And he said, I want you to sit in one of our cars. And I was like, here we go. Little sales pitch.
How does it fit?
Yeah. Can you feel that? Like, yeah. And I sat in this car and he was like, turn the engine on. And no word of a lie, I've not heard an engine like it in my life. It was insane.
What mod was it?
That was a Bentley Continental.
A Conti, the GT.
Continental.
Yeah.
And that was, I think it was the V10 that they do. It sounded like a motorbike, but it was just such a smooth sound. Yeah. And he was like, Melvin, when you're ready, come to me. And I just couldn't stop thinking about that car. Couldn't stop thinking about it. And I messaged him one day and I said, look, I've saved up some money. Could you find me a second-hand one? And so he found me this beautiful second-hand V8 Bentley Continental. And I had that for about 4 years. The servicing on that, guys, was insane.
Yeah.
I bet. And was that your sole car I mean, with each of these, when you're talking about the 911s and whatnot, are these all one car at a time? You're not sort of multiple sort of garaging here?
I've never had more than like one car at a time.
Yeah.
I would love to. I tell you what, when I was transitioning from the 911 to the Continental, I was trying to really justify having them both at the same time.
To it.
But like to pay road tax and insurance and all that stuff is just insane. So I actually part exchanged the Porsche for the Continental. But it's weird when you're going to like your Sainsbury's and parking up your Bentley
In the Benner.
to get like a can of beans and some bread. So it was insane. And then I gave up the Bentley, which was like the hardest thing ever, because I had a friend who worked for Mercedes, and she offered me a Mercedes AMG GTS.
Oh, nice.
On a lease, and it was just like, it was a brand new car. I haven't had a new car in a really long time.
Was this the big 6.3 one before they reduced it?
Yeah. So, and with Mercedes, when you get a new car, they can offer you time on their track day in Surrey or somewhere.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
At Mercedes-Benz World. So you get to drive the one up from that. So I actually got to drive the Mercedes-Benz GTS, which is just so powerful. It's a lot wider. The arches are a lot bigger. It's just a faster, more powerful car.
It's a weapon, that car, isn't it?
Absolute weapon. And so I had the GTS last year, but it was during COVID. So I had this supercar on my drive for like a year where no one was seeing me, where I wasn't driving anywhere, where it was like complete waste. So I handed it back just before Christmas, and I just said to myself, I'm going to just save up again, get like a Mini again, so I can get to work and back. Because I've always loved Minis. I've always been fans of Minis. And then I'll save up for something else.
With that whole sort of history within a few years of some really, really tasty stuff, you know, with the 911s and the Bentley and the AMG Mercs, you're going in different directions there. So if I was to ask you, you can have one, okay, one and one only for the rest of your days. And I will give you some time on this. You don't have to give me a snap decision. But which one would you choose?
And you want an answer now? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I want an answer within the next couple of minutes. But
you know what, Dave? If I had to pick, and I know JP would say the same, you'd just say Porsche 911.
Yeah.
Because it just ticks all the boxes. It could be an everyday car. It's a supercar. It's a car which you could drive, and you can make a statement. It's opulent, but at the same time, it's not over the top. The thing about Porsche is, unless you know them, you could have a Porsche for like 30, 40 grand, or you can have a Porsche for 120 grand. Unless you know them, you actually wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
And so for me, they kind of tick so many boxes. And weirdly enough, my black edition, I always regret kind of selling that on, because it was a collector's item.
Yeah.
And the guy who sold me that, he's a proper geek. So he remembers the number plate. And every now and then he'll see it in London, and he'll send me a picture of it. And it still looks in pristine order. It's still running. I had that about 7 years ago. So yeah, stuff like Porsches they're just like, they run forever. Yeah. They run forever.
I'm a huge fan. Best cars in the world, I reckon.
And I wasn't a Porsche. It was Ricky that got me into Porsches.
Was it?
Okay.
Yeah, I used to think Porsches were for wankers.
Did you?
Serious. And the reason why I got that is because I had an accident in my BMW, and so Ricky's mate was like, Melvin, I can lend you a car while you get your next car. And he used to work for Porsche, and he was like, look, I'm going to lend you he lent me a Panamera, and then he lent me, what's their Roadster, not the Boxster. Is it Cayman?
The Cayman, yeah. The little two-seater.
Yeah, so he lent me the Cayman, and I was like, this is nice. And then he lent me a 911, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And now I understand why. Because once you drive it, it's a different world, man. And they are such a powerful car. They can be quite scary at times.
I've never driven one, and I always must. But I suppose my take on a 911 is the fact that it has remained so similar for so many years. I therefore think, well, do you know what? It must be doing everything right. And I think that's part of it, isn't it? You know, when you've effectively got the same shape and in terms of the weight and the mechanics, it's the same mix, isn't it? Obviously, they make it better and whatnot, and they advance it. But when you have a product and you think, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I tell you what, in terms of the drive, if you go back to, say, the first water-cooled 911 they did, which is probably, 1999, in the 911 shape, which was the first one after 993. To drive that now, quick, it's a bit of a handful. But in 3 years, oh my God, the difference. And the you know, like the modern ones now, like the Turbo S or something, man, it's so quick, but it's effortless to drive it. And you know, it makes you like Lewis Hamilton. It just turns you into a great driver because it does everything for you.
Yeah.
Amazing technology.
Can I ask you guys your view on the whole moving electric?
How weird, Melvin, because that was
Yeah.
my next question to you.
Oh,
in
really?
fact.
Okay.
What's your take generally then, Melvin? I mean, as somebody who's had some pretty serious petrol on his drive, can you see yourself in an electric car?
BMW lent me the i8 a few years ago, and the acceleration, and actually the drive is a really beautiful drive. My problem is range.
Yeah.
I remember driving that drove it to West London and back home to North London, and it needed a charge again, and that was a hybrid. Do you mean? And for me, the same as you guys, at that time I was gigging a lot. I was up and down the country, so I need a car that's going to be able to take me from A to B without having to stop and start all the time. And recently, it's only quite recently, because obviously you guys know I work for Radio 1. The congestion charge has gone up to £15 even after 6 o'clock. So I'm now thinking about ways on how I can save money driving into central London.
Yeah.
So I actually have been looking at that Porsche. But then someone said to me, Melv, the range is, questionable, and I've got family up north. So then I was looking at the Tesla, but I feel like I don't think the Tesla looks sexy enough. The only Tesla that I like the look of is the Roadster, which would just be far too much money, which then defeats the object of having an electric car in the first place. So I don't think, until they come down in price, I don't know if I see myself in a nice enough one.
V8 muscle car, that's what you want. Sod the electric.
I love the fact that actually, as a inner London living guy working in central London, and to avoid the congestion charge, obviously you're thinking electric. Lots of people are, right? But rather than a Leaf or something, you're thinking a Taycan.
yeah. I know.
How can I help the situation and be more responsible with the planet? I'm going to buy an electric supercar.
I'm so bad, I know.
No, mate, you've got it right. You're not so bad. That's how we should all think.
Dave's right. I'm not thinking correctly.
No, you're thinking perfectly correctly. I love it.
No. I'm not saying it's not correct. I just think it's funny. But I'm fully behind you.
I should get a Prius, really and truly. But we're people that love cars.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's the happy medium of getting a car that I enjoy driving, but also it's saving the environment at the same time. And to have that balance for me is hard.
So here's a question for you. Fantasy drive, anywhere in the world, what car, what music, where's the location?
G question. That's a big question. My God. I have never, ever driven a Lamborghini in my life.
Perfect.
I would love to drive a Lambo on the Autobahn. I've only been on the Autobahn once. And that was when me and Ricky, do you know that festival, Snowbombing?
Yeah.
Where everyone snowboards and stuff. And we drove from London to Austria and back. And I would say Ricky and my friend James, who was directing the show at the time, they're better drivers than me. But they were so tired that they let me drive a little bit on the Autobahn. But once I started to drive, I was such a bad driver that they couldn't sleep, because I was just like, I was terrified, because it feels crazy. You're just not used to cars driving that fast beside you.
For me, it's not even the speed. Autobahns, I think, are really difficult to drive on. I think they're far more difficult to drive on than the motorway here. And here's the reason. Because they're only 2 lanes, they are very unforgiving. Because if you want to do a bit more than you could do here, so let's suppose you've got something half decent, and you want to sit there and do 120 or 130, something like that, which is most people, I would suggest.
Yeah.
You sit out there, but then you've got loons in crazy big AMG stuff coming down you, and they're doing 170, 180. Now, you then spend more time looking behind you than you do in front because you see them coming, and when you see them, they get on your tail very quickly. You've then got to duck into that space, but then you've got a wagon there doing 60 or 70, and you've somehow got to negotiate yourself from 130 down to 65 and then back up again. It's not relaxing.
Do you know what, mate? You've hit the nail right on the head, and that is on an Autobahn. If you're like the loons and you're pushing on, actually that's quite good because you're focused, you're reading ahead. But if you're cruising like you say 100, just over 100,
it's difficult sitting in the middle ground.
It's hard work actually because you are just can't relax.
Yeah,
but it feels odd though, mate, Melvin, doesn't it? I went past a police car once on Autobahn doing 150 mile an hour, and I couldn't help but slow down. And the bloke I was with said, "No, come on, crack on."
So I'm guessing both of you have done that then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what cars were you in for both? Because we was only in a Volvo.
Mine was nothing special. This was years ago when my dad was still alive. We used to go on sort of European driving holidays. We just used to like to drive around. No plan, no nothing. We had our ferry crossing booked on the way out, and then 10 days later, whatever, we had our ferry crossing back. And thereafter, we were completely off plan. And it was before the days of sat-nav and smartphones and all that kind of stuff. Just to get the map out on the bonnet. My dad had a BMW 530, right? Just a nice big cruising lump, right?
Yeah.
Nothing special, no AMG, nothing like that, automatic. But I used to love driving this car because it was so comfy. And we just get the bonnet out and we kind of go, right, which way? Do we go to the coast? Do we go to the mountains? Do we go to France? Do we go to Italy? Do we go? And we did the lot over the years. And actually, that was where we did the Autobahns. And I just remember finding it a lot more difficult than I thought. If there was a third lane, it would be fine. If there was a third lane, you wouldn't mind because all the loons could sit out on the outside. Your trucks would be on the inside, and then you could kind of, weave in and out of the middle as and when. But with only two, the extremes there of having guys doing 180 in one lane and a truck doing 65 in another, and you want to sit somewhere in the middle, it's tough, that.
Right, it's quick though, isn't it? On the road, doing north of 150, it's really quick.
Do you know what it is? It's how fast stuff comes up at you. That's the difference. And that, I think, is where it gets scary because it's all about stopping distance and reaction time. Because if somebody pulls out at you there, and they haven't looked, and you're doing north of 150, you're on them very, very quickly.
You've got a moment. I was in a Brabus doing an item for fifth gear back in the day. It might even be driven, I can't remember.
What Brabus was it?
I forget which one, but it was the big one. And we were trying to do 200 mile an hour down the Autobahn. 200? Yeah, we did, but it was stressful, I have to say. And there was a couple of moments where I'm on the brakes. But yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I don't like doing that speed in road cars. No. It's
too much.
Too quick.
Okay, because you guys, I think, by the sounds of it, know the best places to drive. So if I do get that Lambo, where do I go?
That's a great question, actually.
There's loads of good drives. That's the thing, isn't it? There are fantastic drives up the coast of Ireland.
Right.
There's obviously, everybody thinks about things like, down the west coast of California and Monterey and Big Sur and all that kind of stuff. But, I mean, listen, there's beautiful drives all around the world. If you're in the right car and you've got a decent bit of road, you're going to enjoy yourself.
Well, do you know what? I was in a Lambo. We went over to the Brecon Beacons to do a fifth gear item, and I was in the LP 700. I mean, it was mental, this thing. Big V12. And I decided, I was living in Oxford, I decided to come on the Heads of the Valleys road and come on, not going on any motorways. It was all dual carriageway, but quick roads. Mate, one of the best drives I've ever had. Yeah, you're right, Dave. You needn't go far. There's some cracking roads around.
There really are. There's great roads everywhere. So listen, this is what we need to do. Because you're not on the telly enough, Melvin, at the moment. We need to come up with a new telly format, which is Melvin's Dream Drives, right? You're going to have me and you're going to have JP there. We'll plan the route. We'll get the cars. We'll get it all sponsored. Let's it on the telly. Do it.
Mate, I love it.
I would love that.
You get your people to speak to our people. And, we'll get it on.
And on that note, we should probably bail out, JP.
That's it for this week's Fueling Around, powered by Adrian Flux. As the UK's largest specialist insurance broker, Adrian Flux will tailor a quote to your exact needs to help you save money on your car, your bike, or even your home insurance. Dave, thanks as always. But a huge thank goes to our special guest this week, Mr. Melvin, I've got the best agent in the world, Odoom. Thanks, pal.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure, man. Pleasure.
Great to have you on. Don't forget, you can get in touch with us on Twitter at Jason Plato or at David Vitti. And if you've liked what you've heard, feel free to give us a 5-star rating, press the subscribe button, and share the podcast on all your socials.
Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next time. Ta-da.